Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and a special Monster Hunter video for you today. That's because the USA Championship happened last night while I was sleeping instead. For the first time in 5 years then, Monster Hunter have held their own special tournament in person. This one was in San Diego at the current TwitchCon. They did this back with World, which was really cool at the time. It's great to see them do something like this, fun in person again. But the basic concept was this. You've got teams of 2 hunters that work together to speedrun a target monster in the arena as quick as they can. So there was a bunch of people that did this, but it was the top 6 teams that went to the finals that actually competed at TwitchCon in front of a proper crowd. So it's a cool event to sort of celebrate Monster Hunter speedrunning, putting a spotlight on that cool aspect of the community. Now the qualifiers already happened, in which they went against the Kumatrice in the arena, so not the hardest target ever, but the times they got were pretty impressive, plus the target we're looking at for the finals is Rathalos, so a bit harder. But no matter where you placed, if you were in the top 6, you get a baby seikret plushie and a special Rathalos hoodie, but the top 3, they got a trophy tied to their placement. They look really cool, 3rd and 2nd place getting this sort of special horn set up and reference to the actual event, but 1st place is insane. Arkveld's head just sort of pouring out a pillar that's holding it up. That looks incredible, and because it's a team of 2, both players get their own insane trophy, so fantastic. So who and what won? What was their strategy? What was going on? We're going to take a look. We did get a little look at the qualifier though. Piles of people in a private room set up with all the loadouts and the hunt itself. Everyone seemed very positive, very hyped. I definitely think it looked fun. But obviously it resulted in 6 teams for the finals. There was Bruh, Karting Club, Taste Technicians, Bromigos, Heaven or Hell, and Hell Hunters from bottom to top in the initial placements. So let's look at the finals. The event had our awesome community manager, Joe Bustos, running the event, and 2 great hosts for it, doing interviews and commentary, Jal Bagel and Lord Vietna, who, by the way, was an incredible help in the review build of Wilds. When we were able to play the game a little early, I'd always see Lord answering people's questions, hopping in hunts, sharing what he'd learned, so it's really cool to see him here. But you have 3 loadouts to choose between, and you're forced into those setups. That means you couldn't choose from all the 14 weapons, but only 6 total. And then you've got equipment and a skill set tied to that, and you make the most out of it. So for loadout 1, you had a longsword or charge blade. For loadout 2, you had the insect glaive or heavy bowgun, and finally for the 3rd loadout, you had the hunting horn or sword and shield. Now importantly, that 3rd set came with a single flash pod, which is obviously impactful in this hunt. Let's take a look at the hunts, do a quick overview of how it went and some of the coolest stuff that happened. For the first hunt of the day, we saw the use of hunting horn and insect glaive initially, so that's set 2 and 3. The team Bruh had a great opening. The insect glaive instantly mounted Rathalos, while this gave the hunting horn player time to apply the buffs for the team. So, instead of wasting time playing the songs, it was efficient. Then the hunting horn player swapped their weapon out to the sword and shield to keep the buffs for a bit. As soon as Rathalos went down, they went in on their head. It was a paralysis SNS, and of course with the shield bonks, you're building up KO at the same time, so they're building up for DPS windows. Very smart stuff. Now not long into the hunt, we see that first paralysis proc, leading into a perfect rush combo in this context. After Rathalos gets up here, that's when they would use their first flash pod from that 3rd set, just like we mentioned. So that opens up another DPS window, great control. So the first half of the fight went really well, but the second half goes a bit messier. Like, at this point, the hunting horn buffs run out, and in that moment the glaive player triggers a 2nd mount to get back some control. But obviously while they're mounted, the other player deals less damage, and the SNS player didn't swap to hunting horn to rebuff or anything like that. Interestingly, the glaive player was using a lot of aerial attacks. The set does encourage it, but they weren't doing the familiar Essence Dump loop at all. But the worst part was when we saw the SNS player Car to the fire breath at almost 4 minutes into the hunt, near the end of the kill, which is a huge blow. They get back into it, get a power proc, and end the hunt pretty quick there at a 4 minute and 34 second clear. So a solid sub 5 to start us off, solid strats, but some things went wrong. Let's jump into the next hunt and see what they did. The next team achieved a 3:29, nearly a full minute faster. How did they do that? Well, it's the same setup, set 2 and 3 being used, so we're seeing that trend. The difference here is instead of swapping to SNS, the hunting horn user stayed on the hunting horn. Hunting horn, as we've seen with Omega, is doing insane in terms of output. Especially with the benefits of easier placement of the echo bubbles lately, the reverbing hits those provides, the hilt stab and the general output is strong. Anyway, the hunt leads into an early offset from that horn user, bringing Rathalos down for a nice DPS window. Awesome to see some offsets. It landed importantly in pre-set up echo bubbles for proper DPS. That, alongside the impressive blunt KO buildup on the head, the horn actually brings down the Rathalos a second time for another DPS window, so it's working overtime. Again, interestingly, is how the glaive user maintains their essence instead of dumping and recovering like you might normally see. It's the hunting horn user that's spending all of their wounds by focus striking it. This is because it has a longer animation, interrupting Rathalos for longer, letting the glaive deal great DPS. But obviously, it involves the echo bubbles and keeping their placement good. Things do go wrong though. Their flash pod did whiff, which means it didn't bring down Rathalos, which would have been a huge DPS window. Towards the end of the hunt, we do see the rising spiral slashes being used a bit for some good output. Since it's towards the end, they don't need to get the essence back, and they ultimately result in a 329 kill time, which is obviously over a minute faster, so pretty impressive. Moving on though, we have the third team's attempt, where we'll do some quicker talks from here. Finally, we're seeing a different weapon being used. We have the heavy bowgun from set 2, with the other player using the third set again with hunting horn and sword and shield, but it's still set 2 and 3 once more. They open the fight with S&S early instead of using hunting horn or buffing strats, and go for an early KO. The heavy bowgunner has some interesting potential here, with pierce ammo to, run down the length of Wrath, the fact that the bowgun can perfect guard, or to set up a clash DPS window, or offset in a pinch. And when they did go for their offset, sadly it didn't land, which would have had some big impact. They used a variety of ammo though, from cluster bombs initially, a bit of potential spread use early, a lot of water ammo for the element, and poison for that status, which maybe should have been used a lot earlier. And we see they're going to use their gauge to machine gun fire throughout any knockdown or power proc for those DPS windows. Despite all of that, the hunt ends with a 5 minute and 6 second clear time, which is the slowest of the 3 so far, but actually puts it overall, I believe, at 4th place. So things take an interesting twist from here. For our next team, we finally see a proper fresh loadout. This one, again heavy bowgun, then our first longsword of the day. Unfortunately, things go very messy in this hunt, where there's a good approach, but it just goes wrong. The gunner carts to the same attack we saw the first cart of the tournament of, which was the fire breath drag, super deadly. Ever since Rise, I've been very wary of that attack. And sadly, a second cart happens, this time for the longsword user, only for a third cart with the gunner to go down not long after that. Despite this, they still manage a 555, so sub 6 is still impressive considering 3 carts. But while there was potential here, it just went wrong. And I don't begrudge them for this. In front of a crowd on the stage, the pressure is a lot higher. And in a speedrun environment, when you make the first major mistake, it's often just over, and in this context you can't reset, which is hard on the mental. But that brings us to the 5th team, which is hilariously and wonderfully using 2 longswords. These chads are going for it with the counter spam and the solid respectable range of longsword against a flying enemy. I really like it in the arena environment against Wrath and Rathian. But to cut to the chase for this pair, it doesn't go great. There's 2 carts with each player going down once. The first cart was to the fire breath drag, of course. The second was more of an awkward moment, going for a foresight sort of counter, but messing up the timing, leaving them exposed to the following fire shot that takes them out. So as much as I respect this fun setup, it goes wrong and ultimately leads to a 544 clear. So not last place, which is reasonable considering. But I think from that, we can see that from the 3 sets, set 2 and 3 has the best potential in combination. So for our last team of the day, I noticed in their little interview how serious these guys were. They talked about focusing on heavy consistency to get the top time they got with the first hunt. They claim to have ran the specific hunt many times in prep and have a very good plan in mind. So let's take a look. So it's set 2 and 3 again, with the hunting horn and insect glaive specifically, of course. But differently here, the players grab burst pods as they drop down. One of the players explained that if they fired this at the ground, it kind of draws the attention of Wrath, meaning it lands so they're the first team to actually be able to land a sneak attack. So that's huge damage and CC for the setup, and plays a big role because the hunting horn user gets to quickly prep all their songs in that moment. The hunting horn user sets up their bubbles, while the glaive user stands in on top of that. Holding position as best they can in the bubbles, the glaive user immediately pops the rocksteady to ignore the roll, maintain DPS, and general damage reduction. Then they get an air flinch for some safe DPS, which then leads into a full knockdown with the damage on the head for fantastic DPS in that window. Plus it's on the edge of the echo bubbles, so I think they're working. They both heavily focus on the head to maximize the hit zone, the glaive user spamming rising slash, but never going for the spiral essence dump to maintain DPS at the head. This is because they're letting the hunting horn user engage with the wounds like we saw earlier. So it's the longer interruption, DPS freedom for the glaive during it, but again helping set up more echo bubbles at the same time, which is clearly worth it. Again, the glaive user has Flare 5 on that set, which helps them engage with the wounds and then let the hunting horn user actually use them. As soon as that ends, the horn user moves to the side with a flash pod prepped for yet another DPS window for both of them. This is where things get a bit more messy for most runners, but thankfully, it goes well for this team. And the moment Wrath gets flying, it flings itself back in straight into a hunting horn offset, which again holds it in place and gives them another DPS window. Landing that really seals the deal as Wrath dies at an incredible time of 2 minutes and 29. By far the fastest time, again a full minute ahead of second place, which is crazy. So set 3 is the most popular set, with set 2 closely behind that, for specifically Hunting Horn and Insect Glaive as the most used weapons of the 6. We also saw no Charge Blade today, but with the sets, the skills and items you get, it plays a heavy role in this context. Rocksteady Mantle, the Flash Pod, they're very valuable, but then the skills that you have and how much you engage with them. This does relatively line up with the weapon rankings and the outputs we've seen from the many that I've done. Hunting Horn remaining near the top right now, Insect Glaive being a top 5 performer for a lot of rankings. But I think their strategy and how they engaged with the skill sets of the loadouts was the biggest deal. But yeah, that brings us to the end then. Third place with a 434, the team that used Insect Glaive and Hunting Horn but swapped to SNS off the horn. Second place with a 329, the team with the Glaive but then consistent use of the Hunting Horn instead of buffing. But obviously, a couple things went wrong for them. And finally, first place with an incredible 229, maximizing the loadout, the items, the clear focus of the glaive and horn working in the best team play we saw, the burst pods being used, the sneak attack. I would say loadout 3 was the clear winner. So props to them, this was great to see. So I hope you guys enjoyed my recap and my overview of the event. It's really nice to see Capcom do this kind of thing and see some dedicated players with some clever strats for the situation. Shout out again to Lord Vietna and Jal Bagel for doing the commentary and interviews. Joe Bustos, RCM, for running it. And again, I really hope we see more of this in the future. In fact, Josh was telling me about something happening in France soon, so we might talk about that too. Until next time, I've been Hollow, you've been you, thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.